Hey guys, Andrew Swihart here, coming to you from the 405 freeway. It is a lovely overcast day on a January morning on my way to Santa Monica to work on another show. And the freeway is still full of people. They're all here. It's great. At least I don't feel like I'm alone. So, in a recent podcast, I talked about do you need to go to college or not to get an art degree, and I gave my opinion on that, and so I'm not gonna talk about that again. But I discussed some alternatives, and I just wanted to give you the lowdown as to what exactly that I did. As an alternative to college. Even though I did end up going to college and got my AA degree, I did drop out before I got my BA degree. And so I just want to, but I also want to talk about all the other things that I did, because I actually decided at a very young age that I wanted to be an artist. I was probably 5 when I decided I wanted to be an artist. So this podcast is intended for young people. It's intended for people that are trying to become artists, and it's also intended for parents who maybe their kids are very talented. Maybe they're very talented artists or singers or dancers or any kind of creative art. So when I was really young, probably about 5 years old, I was drawing a lot. Now, my parents did not allow television in the house, so the only way to entertain myself was to read books and draw, and that's what I did. Now, they didn't allow a television in the house. It was more like they just didn't want us sitting in front of the TV. Now, and I think that's a great idea. I actually don't have a television in my house. I have about 30 computers and iPads and iPhones and MacBooks and my phone and everything. And so my kid has a lot of access to watching videos and stuff, but we really try to rein it in because I want him to, think. I just don't want him to, anyway, you get the idea. But, so my parents didn't allow any kind of television in the house. I basically would listen to old time radio stories. I would listen to the radio, listen to music, and draw and read, and that's what we did. And I thought that was a really great place, because what it did is it forced me to start enjoying doing my creative stuff. And even as a kid, I was filming little videos. I got a computer at a young age. I started doing digital art when I think it was in first grade. And back then, not many people had computers. My grandfather just bought me one because he thought it would be good for me. And then my mom would buy me Legos because she thought that those would help me. And it's funny because today I do a lot of 3D. It's basically just like digital Legos instead of the computer. Only have a lot more control over the outcome. So anyway, but one of the things that my mom did, and I think this is one of the most important things, is she seeked out people for me who were doing professionally what I wanted to do when I was an adult. So there were many occasions that I remember we went to Hanna Barbera, and my mom had contacted them, like literally called the front desk and said, "Hey, my kid wants to be an animator. Can I bring him by?" Sure enough, they were like, "Yeah, of course you can bring him by." Next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I was at Hanna Barbera, and I was being shown around, and I got to meet the people who would do the layout, and I would get to meet the people who would do the recording, the sound, and how they would line the recording of the sound up with the different syllables that the animators would then draw the shapes of the mouth. And then they were still using cells back in those days. It was in the 80s. And they were still using cells, and I got to see how they would paint the cells, and this amazing experience. My mom set that up for me. She got me in there, and I got to see all this stuff as a young kid. And then I remember we got onto my uncle knew some people in the film industry, and we got to go to Warner Brothers, and we got on set back there in Warner Brothers, and I got to see where Blade Runner had been filmed, and I got to meet some of the camera guys, and I got to meet all these people, and I was really like where I saw where the Dukes of Hazzard, where Boss Hogg used to live in the police station, and all these different things that I was exposed to, and I got to meet, the producers and the directors and the actors, and I got to meet all these people just because, my mom made this effort. Like, she was like, well, if my kid is going to learn this stuff, he's going to learn this stuff, and there's a bunch of other experiences like that. I went to go to a comic book place where they made comic books. I don't think that place is in business anymore. I forget what the name of it was, but I got to meet actual comic book artists. I went to go see where The Simpsons at Film Roman. I got to go check that out. And then my uncle would introduce me to people because, if you're an artist, chances are you're not the only artist in the family, right? Or if you're a musician, chances are you're not the only musician in the family. If you're a fill in the blank, chances are you're not the only one in the family, right? It's like almost like in your genes, it's in your DNA that you're going to do this. So if you're in a small town, it's going to be a little bit harder, but expose yourself to the work. Get out there and go experience it. I'll tell you right now, going to film school is not going to give you as nearly as much a leg up as if you're a kid going to check out some of the stuff that I got to see when I was working, or when I got to go see stuff on set. It just made this lasting impression in me. The next thing you knew, I was coming home and I was making movies in my backyard. And then I was writing movies, and I remember I sent out all my scripts to all the people that I had met, that I got their business cards over at Warner Brothers. Or it was Paramount. I don't remember which one it was. It was Paramount or Warner Brothers. I think it was Warner Brothers, though. So that was one way that my mom really helped educate me. The other thing that I used to do is I would get all these art books, because originally I thought I was going to be an illustrator. At one point, when I was in high school, I thought I was going to be an illustrator. And I'd come home every day from high school. I'd play with my friends. And for 2 hours every night, I would go upstairs into my room. I had my little drafting table. I had all my, paints and brushes and my pencils, and I would draw and paint 2 hours every night, all through junior high, all through high school. Every single night, I would come home and I would do that before I went to bed. And I had these stories that I was writing. I still have movie scripts that I wrote back then that I have full intention of making the movie one day. And so I was sort of, when I got to the level where I was starting to look for work, I hadn't just been goofing around. I actually had this really expansive portfolio of stuff, and it was really easy for me to find a job because I had so much experience just out there in the world and learning all these things and copying, artists and professionals, that it's almost like I didn't need a degree, because I already had one. And I didn't need to go pay someone a bunch of money to have a piece of paper to somehow validate what I already knew that I wanted to do, and I already had it in me. Now, that's what happened to me, and that's what I did. And my mom was a big part of that, that catalyst that got me excited about being an artist, that pushed me in that direction. And taught me that discipline that I needed to sit down and do the art. One of the things that I notice about kids going to art school is they've been told so much they need this degree. They've been brainwashed into thinking that they can't become an artist without a degree. Okay, well, there's been artists all through histories that didn't have degrees, all through history. Yeah, they may have gone to a great school when they were young or whatnot, and there's a few of those, right? But there's a ton other ones that didn't have degrees that did great, that did really, really well. And back then, a lot of times when you went to a school, you were more of an apprentice, and you ended up getting paid after a while to be at that school, which is completely different than the schools that we have today. It's completely different mindset. It's totally different. It's not like those old schools, so don't confuse them. Today, it's just like a factory where they just pump out degrees that don't really mean anything, whether the kid has learned it or not. It's just like going through a public high school. So anyway, that's an alternative. I just want to kind of explain, that you can foster all this stuff at home in your house. You can build all this stuff. You could, and I would like to use an example. Someone who I have worked with, who I have the highest respect for, a gentleman that was just blew me away when I worked with him. It's just such a talent. He used the same kind of motto that I did, and I'm not equating myself to him. I'm not saying that I'm as good as this guy because of what I did, but he did the same thing. He started making movies when he was a kid, and he would make movies with his friends, and he would literally charge admission into his backyard. He would go out and hand out flyers and say, hey, we're going to have a movie showing in my backyard. And he would project it on like the back of the house or a giant sheet in the backyard. And he would go film a movie and then get all the neighbors to come over and pay to watch it. And it's brilliant, and he was a kid doing this. He was a kid. And later on, he knew he really wanted to go to Universal Studios. He just really wanted to work there. And so when the train was going, he was on the train, the story goes, and he jumped off the train when they turned a corner in the back lot of Universal Studios, and he just started walking around the lot. I mean, he was a visitor, right? He's on the tram, getting the tour, and he jumped off the train and went walking around the lot. He found a room, this is a true story, he found a room that no one was using, and he's like, okay, I'm going to set up my office here. This is a true story. I'm going to set up my office here. He goes on his way out. He makes friends with all the security guards on his way out. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? This guy's 16 years old, right? Makes friends with all the security guards on his way out. And then the next day returns in like a suit, with the briefcase. Says hi to the security guards. And they just, they let him in. They're like, oh yeah, it's you. Come on in. And he set up a shop, pirate style, in Universal Studios. He set up his own little department, and eventually was able to get his own pass, and he just worked the system, and he like gained it. Anyway, he validated himself. That's the point I'm trying to say. He validated himself, and that's so much more important. Anyway, if you don't know who this person is, it's Steven Spielberg, and that's how he got to start. Food for thought. Anyway, hope you guys have a great day. Talk to you next time.